Hey everybody, another one of our end of the year videos. This video is actually a little bit of a preview of what you're going to get next year in ninth grade. It's not everything. I don't want to steal all those really cool things from those teachers because there's fascinating stuff that you're going to get in what I believe they're still calling global issues. It's the second half of world history. What I did on this post is I attached a blank outline and a word bank. If you want to challenge yourself, I mean, there's no grade, but if you want to challenge yourself before watching this video, because I'm going to put the answers up, pause the video, open it up, play around with it. Nobody expects you to get them right. We would normally just do this for like 15 minutes in groups, see what everybody knows, and we wouldn't know a lot because you haven't covered it yet. And then you're exposed to it the next year. So I'm going to skip some stuff, but I'm just some of the topics you're going to get to cover for next year. So let's share the screen so we can make it interesting again. Okay, so obviously, if you're looking at this now, you're not trying it on your own, which is fine. So a ninth grade global issues is all about the second half of world history. It technically picks up where you left off in seventh grade. And some of these things you cover in ninth grade, you'll cover again in 10th grade, but from the American perspective. So what we covered this year, you more than likely will hit again a little bit of the age of absolutism with divine right. Remember, we had the crown on, and with the eyeballs open, we went to light bulb, and then we went to the Enlightenment, where we got away from divine right, and we started to go to people thinking for themselves. Okay, thinking for themselves, popular sovereignty, natural rights, a lot of the ideas in the Declaration. So you'll move forward from the 16 to the 1700s, and you'll look at the Second Industrial Revolution, which starts in England, and it's going to be mass production, urbanization, massive cities being really developed. And hopefully you get into a bunch of things like the factory system, Darwinism, the Bessemer process for steel. You'll at least get to that when you cover it in American history. And I threw some other things on there. A fascinating topic that you'll get to cover is the French Revolution. We briefly mentioned the French Revolution when we were talking about when the U.S. is determining, when you got Jefferson versus Hamilton and Washington's first cabinet, who are we going to side with in the War of 1812, England or France? Well, France had gone through their own revolution, and the people that helped us during the American Revolution weren't alive anymore, really. And you're going to spend a lot of time on the French Revolution, storming of the Bastille, the common folk kind of taking over and rising up against the king. This reign of terror thing, definitely having fun with the guillotine and Robespierre, and then Napoleon. You're going to go into Napoleon a whole lot more. The rise of nationalism in the 1800s sees Italy and Germany formed as nations, and some of these big empires that you talked about in seventh grade fall apart. That leads us to what I know a lot of you start getting interested in, World War I. And you're going to see how small alliances blow up into bigger situations. Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary is killed by Gavrilo Princip in Bosnia. You wouldn't think of any of those as important places, but because of allies, everybody gets involved and turns into a massive war with thousands dying. Some of the things in there, Germany and the rest of the Allied powers, as you see on there, versus the Germany versus the Allied powers, sorry. New technologies, we talked about automatic machine gun, tank, submarine. You're going to see a lot of that stuff. Forms of total war, like we saw with the Civil War, propaganda with Russia leaving, U.S. coming in, not at the very beginning. Germany ends up losing millions dead. And the negative to World War I is Germany gets crushed, and all of the allies that we would call good guys, the United States and its friends, don't help rebuild Germany. Now you're like, wait, we just beat them, we should help them. Because we don't help them, it leads to struggles. You're also going to get to things like the Russian Revolution. During World War I, Russia left the war because they went through their own revolution. You're going to get fascinating people like Lenin and the Bolsheviks, Marx and communism, and the start of not Russia, but the USSR, the Soviet Union. And Stalin, Russia as a Soviet Union is a fascinating history. You'll do a lot with that. We see in the 1919 to 1939. Some things change after World War I. We do have a massive stock market crash that brings on the Great Depression in the United States and throughout the world. We see the rise of dictators in countries that had been beaten, in Mussolini in Italy and Adolf Hitler in Germany. And this fascism, Nazism is the idea that you just blindly follow the leadership of the country and that it is a ruler. It's not a democracy. Freedom is no longer there. People think they have freedom because they just go, we're going to follow our leader and trust every single thing they say without question. That's not good leadership. That's control. And that's what happened in these countries. A lot of the people bought in once the ones that didn't were killed. And this leads to the start of World War II. You'll do so much with Germany, Italy, Japan versus Britain, France, some others. The U.S. is not involved right away. You're going to cover things like Pearl Harbor at least a little bit next year, concentration camps, the Holocaust, D-Day. You'll get so much more after the war ends. I'm simplifying because I don't want to steal much from the high school. You'll see, as it says, 75 million dead. 75 million dead. Creation of the United Nations, which is an organization that is, in theory, all of the countries working together so we don't have another war. And then you're going to see, and this is just a fast run through, hopefully you'll get to the world since 1945, since World War II. And I know when I used to cover it, we went in regions. I'm sure that they do it differently now. But you'll see things like how Germany was split in two after the war. Fascinating stuff, how it comes back together. You have East Asia and South Asia. We help rebuild Japan and they become an economic power. China becoming communist. The Asian tigers, a lot of these countries that probably make all the clothes that I'm wearing and that you're wearing were helped in a weird way from being destroyed by us. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure they'd rather have lives back. Okay, most definitely. But we rebuilt better these other countries after World War II because we saw what happened after World War I. So you'll hit a lot of things. You'll get into some of the Gulf Wars with the Middle East and hopefully bring that to present day issues with Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden. Africa, I hope you spend time on apartheid, Nelson Mandela, and how Africa has been carved up over and over and over by people who think that they are better than African. And that's a big issue still today. Some stuff with Latin America. I'm sure that it goes more present day with terrorism and other trade issues today. This was meant to be real quick so you see stuff. It's fascinating stuff to cover next year, and it does get much more present day or to where your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents, you know, if you have some stories there, might know a lot of this stuff. So I hope that that was helpful, and I hope it was quick. We'll see. But that's, in theory, a little bit of what you're going to get next year. I'm sure there's some different things, but that's the rest of world history, and I hope it helped.